I've changed into my pajamas because I ran a 5K this morning, which is something just as pretentious as having a podcast. I have just realized that now. Those are both two things that people do and won't shut up about. So now I have another one, which is great.
Yeah, I feel like people shut up about running like 5Ks or even like 10Ks. It's when you get to the half marathon or the marathon
Mm,
bit that like people don't shut the fuck up about it. But no, the people who don't shut the fuck up about it are like not the serious runners.
yeah.
People who are the serious runners, they don't talk about the runs they go on, like they just run.
They move in silence. The reason that I did that was because friend of the show and the artist of our beautiful new art, which I don't know if we commented when the first set of Murderbot episodes came out, that we also have some new, more sci-fi vibey art now. Casey, friend of the show, artist for the show, had a New Year's resolution of doing a 5K. And so Miles and I decided to get on board the bandwagon and be supportive because we were thinking, okay, if Casey's doing it, then she'll probably actually follow through. Because I think a lot of people have athletic ambitions, exercise ambitions, and then they find a friend and go, okay, we're going to be accountability buddies. We're going to do it together. And then neither of them do it. But we knew that Casey would actually do it. So we did it today. And we were talking about this phenomenon of not shutting up about running. And I think it's because running is so bad to do. It's not fun. It doesn't feel good. It takes a long time. It makes you stinky and you look stupid doing it. So the only thing that you have is to make you keep doing it is other people's perception that you are doing it. The little bit of attention that you get when you're jogging, like if you see people jogging, you go, oh my God, they're so obnoxious. It's 6 a.m. Who do they think they are? They know that they're jogging at 6 a.m. and they want everyone else to notice it and go, wow, that person's so strong and cool and fit. I wish I was like them. Because as someone who has jogged at 6 a.m., yeah, I do want that. I do want people to look at me and go, wow, she has it so together. I'm so impressed. So bragging is all you have. That's the only thing you get out of it. I would have to look up my exact number, but I believe I was 654th. So you could say I'm pretty fast.
Did you guys like run in a pack, or or did the three of you sort of like split off? And
We ran in a pack, the three of us, which was good because it kept us all at a reasonable pace. Because I have learned, and see, now this is me. I'm stating a fact, but it's going to sound obnoxious. It is also kind of a brag. I am significantly faster than both Miles and Casey. So if I was left to my own devices, I would be fucking gone. But because we were all running at the same pace, I actually was able to maintain that pace and run for the whole thing. So I was thinking I'd run part of it and walk part of it. But because I slowed down, I actually ran the whole thing, which I felt more proud of. And also there's like an energy, there's a bunch of people, and so it's like exciting. I forgot that people cheer for you at races. So people were cheering and that felt nice. But
it's the recognition about running that you need.
exactly. Yes, it's the attention. And Pat, also a friend of the show, brought his and Casey's dog to watch us, which was very sweet. And I sent him our live location. None of us knew what the track was going to be. We're like, it could be laps, it could be a big circle. I don't know. But here's our location so you can just see when we're getting close to you and then know when to pay attention, which ended up being very useful. But I'm really proud. It was a big accomplishment. I worked really hard on it. So I will brag about it on my podcast. I'll be double obnoxious. I don't care.
That's fair.
All that is to say, the run that I went on was very close to where you live. So I got to see you, which was a very nice added bonus.
And Molly shed all over my floor.
She was leaving you something to remember her by.
It was enough to like needle felt a new dog.
And she's a short-haired dog. We should ask if we can put a picture of Molly on the social media for this episode, because she is so weird and so lovable. She fascinates strangers. Just in the time when I was with her, not counting, the however long we spent actually running, I saw probably at least 10 people come up to her and go, oh my God, she's so cute. what kind of dog is that? Because you look at her and you go, what the fuck is that? But she's so lovable and she's so
With her little
good.
sideways feet and like looks like a puppy, is not a puppy,
Mm-mm.
is as soft as a puppy.
Will try to clear your sinuses by sticking her tongue all the way up your nose. She just really goes for it.
She's just such a weird little creature.
Just cast your mind back to the early days of PCR tests when they stuck the swab like all the way up your nose. That's kind of what it's like to have Molly lick your face. She's a very good
That's what she's
girl.
trying for.
And she
It's
aims
just
high.
into your sinuses, really, really high into your sinuses.
She's also kind of like, if you've seen those videos of the pumpkin toadlet, which is so small that it doesn't have whatever inner ear fluid or whatever other thing that it needs to have a sense of balance. So it just jumps, but then it can't land. That's her trying to execute a plan. She goes for it. And then there is a conclusion that is maybe not the one that she had hoped for.
I don't think she hopes for a conclusion, though. She just kind of starts.
And isn't that the kind of utter presence in the moment that we should all strive to achieve? That level
The
of
only way to
true
begin is by
zen.
beginning.
The only way to learn is by playing. The only way to win is by learning. And the only way to begin is by beginning. So without further ado, collapses microphone. Let's begin. We were saying something earlier because I don't know if I specified that the 5K I was running, because I'll keep finding ways to bring it up, but it is relevant. It was a Pride 5K specifically because we're recording this in June. And there was somebody there who was wearing a shirt that said eating pussy cures depression. And our party was all looking at each other like, well, maybe. It's like, if any brave soldiers want to volunteer for data collection, we'll just send a beacon up into the sky.
Listen, nothing else has worked, so I'll give it a go.
Listeners, our DMs are open. You know who would immediately turn off this podcast the moment we brought that up?
Murderbot.
Exactly. Or it would have to listen because it's contracted to do so, but then it would immediately delete this from its memory.
Yeah. I feel like I had some sort of raunchy bit for this episode at some point. The point is, good God, we have, I've lost the plot here. Hello, everyone. That's how I'm supposed to start this podcast. That's how I've started 95% of these episodes. But hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Fandom Apprentice. My name is Ryn. I'm one of your hosts. I am a lifelong nerd. I grew up on science fiction and fantasy of all sorts, and one of the pleasures of my adult life has been finding random pieces of science fiction and inflicting them on my friends.
Well, I have a couple of options of jokes to make there. One of them being, well, some of us like having things inflicted on us. But that does not help turning down the horniness of the episode in honor of Murderbot.
Listen, we can make the episode horny. It's just that is not how our friendship goes.
Exactly. That I don't want to mislead. There was also at the Pride 5K, there were two people who were older. They were probably in their mid 50s, early 60s, who were running. And it was a man and a woman, presumably, but they had matching little running outfits, but they both had shirts that said "not a couple," which I thought was very cute and fun.
I love that.
I'm like, that's adorable. I love that they had that shirt ready to go. But anyway.
No, flirt with your friends. Fuck your friends if that's your vibe. Not ours, but
that's fair. I'll take the flirtation, but we'll cut that from the episode because I'm just gonna get gay and flustered today. Because anyway. Goodbye. No, I have to regain composure.
You should have seen my outfit last night. I got comments about how goddamn hot I looked.
I mean, If you took any selfies of the outfit, I will respectfully look
I
at them.
didn't.
But
I didn't take any picture, not a single picture.
what was it? Your just like standard. We can cut this from the episode also. But was it just like the standard queer event outfit, or was it
More or
modified?
less. It was more or less the standard. It was the Garden of Eden
Mm-hmm.
outfit with the snake tights and the boots. Um but I had the shirt open all the way.
Doing a public
And so
service.
it was yeah, just the sports bra and the tights pulled up and the yeah.
I saw somebody again while we were running today. One of the people who was just like out in the crowd was wearing the exact snake tights that you have, and seeing them on a stranger, I was like, oh, I understand why Ryn gets so many comments on these tights. Just seeing them unexpectedly in the world, they're very striking.
I did I've had them for years, and unfortunately last night the toe tore out of one of them.
Oh no.
One of the legs. Which is fine. It didn't cause any major issues.
Mm-hmm.
But, if that continues further, I think that's the start of like further degradation.
Mm-hmm.
But they were also
I'm sure there are
$10.
plenty of people who would sign up for some degradation in the snake tights. Sorry, I had an opening. Continue.
That or helping me tear them off. Um,
Again, we can cut this from the episode. I'm just feeling.
You know what?
I'm
Honestly, no.
punchy.
This is we're horny on main today. Fuck it.
This is staying in. Again, listeners, just slide into our DMs.
Things
Write your
can stay in
sexiest
wherever they
emails.
like.
I didn't even introduce myself for the fucking episode. Because I am making a fool of myself here in front of all the nice podcast people. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm the other one. All that stuff that Ryn said. I'm a nerd also. Let's talk about Murderbot, please.
Yeah, so what we do here is for the first 2 years of this podcast, we read through Lord of the Rings, which was a return for me from my childhood and a first time read through for Sam. We have now read all of Lord of the Rings.
Hell yeah, we have. And watched it.
And watched the movies. And just the trilogy. And we read The Hobbit together separately, not on the podcast. There are, of course, many, many other Tolkien writings that were published posthumously, and a few other poems that were published during his life. We are not currently talking about those. What we are currently talking about is the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, as you may have noticed in the last couple of episodes that we've put out. Today, we are discussing the third Murderbot novella, Rogue Protocol. A protocol of rogues. A protocol of rogues and robots, if we want to make it a, Sarah J. Maas novel.
I don't even know where to begin with that, but I'll file that away. I have so many tangential bits and things, but we gotta stay focused. A protocol of rogues and robots.
Yeah, so this continues the story that was begun in the first two, in All Systems Red and Artificial Condition. And so it picks up more or less where we left off. I do right out the gate, I feel like Rogue Protocol is one of the less well organized novellas in the series.
Ooh, hot take.
It's a little bit, there's a lot of time and space jumping, and I don't necessarily think we needed the extra explanations if it went to this transit ring, and then it went to this transit ring, and then it went to Havratten, and then it went to Milu Station, and then it went to Milu, the terraforming station. It was a lot of jumps right out the gate that were a little hard to keep track of. And I felt like just across the board, this whole novella, there were a lot of little moving parts that occasionally I felt like the story could have been a little bit simplified. despite the fact that it's already like, by the time you get to, and we'll go over the full summary, but by the time you get to like when they're finally on the terraforming station and you start having the conflict, it's already been just under half the book.
Yeah, I do feel like I had a hard time keeping track of things. And this is while I was writing things down to write a summary for this episode. Even towards the end, I wasn't sure. Are they on a shuttle right now? Are they on the ship right now? Where is this taking place? What is happening? Why are there these B plots and C plots? So I cut a lot of extraneous data from the summary.
We have to make room for media.
So true. To jump into said summary, yes, we pick up where we left off at the end of Artificial Condition. Murderbot is on a transport with a bunch of humans who have signed a 20-year contract to a corporation and has accidentally, on purpose, become their de facto security. Murderbot is bound for a place called Milu. The people are set for somewhere else. This is one of those multiple location things. Don't worry about it. Murderbot's going to Milu, where Grey Chris, the bad guys from book 1, are almost certainly up to some sketchy shit with the terraforming facility that may have been used to cover up more alien remnant stuff. Murderbot wants to go there and investigate to find evidence of their wrongdoing for Dr. Mensa, just to sort of thank her for everything that she did for it. And avoiding its feelings about leaving the doomed humans behind, it finds a bot-driven transport that it believes to be unoccupied. Oops, 2 humans, Wilkin and Girth, security consultants for a company called Goodnight Lander Independent, are on the ship, and GI, Goodnight Lander Independent, is taking possession of the abandoned terraforming facility. So they are going there to do something, ?
So they get to Milu Station.
Mm-hmm.
Murderbot travels from Havratten to Milu on this supply ship, which Milu Station is very underpopulated. It's not a large facility. It was primarily there to supply the terraforming facility,
Mm-hmm.
where they meet the team from Goodnight Lander Independent, which is made up of someone named Hiruna, someone named Donna Benna, and their human-shaped bot, Mickey.
Murderbot is forced to befriend Mickey, and it has a lot of emotions about it. It has an entire chapter of emotions about it, while it spies on the humans through Mickey's eyes.
Mm-hmm. It does at one point say outright it had a certain amount of time to seduce the bot, which is just a lovely, interesting turn of phrase.
Oh, absolutely. Murderbot's experimenting with figurative language, and we love that for it. Murderbot eventually strikes out on its own while keeping an eye on the humans. An unknown hostile attacks. Murderbot is forced to blow its cover to save the humans. It comes up with a story for the humans, slightly contradicting what it had said to Mickey before, saying that it's working for a human security consultant named Ryn. It had told Mickey that it was the human security consultant, but Mickey and the human leader, Donna Benna, back it up because they realize that something bigger is going on. Sides form. We realize that Wilkin and Girth may not be trustworthy. Shocker. They're definitely not. They try to murder Donna Benna. They take Wilkin hostage. The good guys take Wilkin hostage, unravel the Grey Chris scheme, make their own plan. There's more fighting. Mickey dies in the process of helping Murderbot fight off one last combat bot. Humans get to safety. Murderbot slips away, and it decides that its new plan is to physically go back to Mensa to share its findings with her. And that is pretty much the book, but it has a lot of moving parts and a lot of other smaller things.
Yeah, and just to like again touch back on the pacing, that whole like last couple of sentences that you said there, that's the entire back half of the story. So it's like what we had as 2/3 of our summary is barely the first half, is like not quite the first half of the book, and then the last third of the summary was the entire, like, over the last half of the book. So the pacing of this one is just a little bit weird.
Yeah, a lot is happening inside Murderbot's mind. Like I said, there's an entire chapter where it's just having emotions about Mickey, which is great. It's a really good chapter, and we will talk about Mickey. But
Oh yeah.
as for a plot summary, the plot of it all is not really the most important thing here. I feel like now that we're really settled into this world, this is book 3, there's a lot less general exposition, a lot less getting people up to speed, and it's a lot more focused on character relationships, putting Murderbot in new social situations, and being sort of an introspective one, as much as a still very action packed sci fi book can be.
Yeah. There are 4 other humans that do feature in the book. They are like 4 other employees of GI. 2 of them are shuttle pilots, and then 2 of them are terraforming researchers, I think.
Hmm.
But they kind of don't matter.
Yeah, I had forgotten most of them. I feel like honestly, you could have Donna Benna, Mickey, and Hirana be the entire team besides Wilkin and Girth, and it would be fine. I would not notice that the other ones were gone.
Yeah, it might be useful to have one of them there, because we do have at towards the end a sort of hostage situation in which Carter and V-Ball, I think, are the
Maybe.
2 on the ship. I literally read this, like I read this book, I reread this last week, and then I sort of ran through the text this afternoon. So literally like less than 3 hours ago. That's kind of how not worthwhile these characters are. But like Carter and Veeble, or Cotter and Veeble, doesn't particularly matter. They're they're useful because they stay on the ship or on the shuttle, and Girth ends up engaged in a hostage situation with them,
Hmm.
basically holding them hostage. So like they're sort of useful to the story, but there are ultimately there's like 4 different, maybe 5 different like goals in this cast.
Hmm.
You have the general goal of Goodnightlander Independent, which is they've taken the contract to investigate the terraforming facility, because apparently it's, when a terraforming facility fails, there can be, that's a lot of money, a lot of resources, and a waste of a planet.
Hmm.
And so that's, a lot of, if that was Grey Chris's fault, that could be very bad for them from a legal sense. So
Hmm.
GI is doing the survey on the state of terraforming. Then there's the combat bots that Grey Chris left on the terraforming facility,
Teehee.
whose goal is to stop anyone from seeing anything on the terraforming facility. Then there's Wilkin and Girth, who were hired by Grey Chris to make sure that the terraforming facility breaks up in the planet's atmosphere, as was originally the plan before GI took on this investigation contract.
Hmm.
Then there's Murderbot, who wants to get information about Grey Chris's malfeasance. And then there's Murderbot again, who's trying to who is trying to aid Mickey and the GI team in getting off the facility alive.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of moving parts. But it did take me until like this past like read through to really like nail down what's happening to whom and where. I feel
Yeah.
like the competing combat bot versus Wilkin and Girth bit has been my sticking point for a long time. Because like the combat bots were left by Grey Chris and instructed to attack anyone that came on the facility, any
Hmm.
intruders to the facility. But Wilkin and Girth were also sent by Grey Chris to destroy the facility. So, but they didn't know about the combat bots.
Yeah, they should definitely have known about the combat bots, because I was thinking, okay, Grey Chris should tell the combat bots that Wilkin and Girth are coming and saying, hey, these guys are on your team. Please don't kill them. XOXO. But, maybe because they're under more scrutiny, and it's also shown in the book that Grey Chris has taken a serious PR hit after the events of the first book, so they are being watched extra closely now. There's been a shit ton of lawsuits. It's not been good. So maybe there would be no way for them to mess with the facility without people noticing. So, maybe you can't tell the bots and have them program around Wilkin and Girth, but you could definitely tell Wilkin and Girth, because they were instructed to kill the actual security team that was supposed to help GI. And so they're ready to do murder. They're receiving briefings. You could also just include, hey, by the way, stay away from the combat bot. Yeah.
I
That's
think,
plot
well, I
hole.
think it does, well, it does get explained, actually. There's like a half a page or maybe even like a 2-line explanation, which is the terraforming facility was not actually a terraforming facility. It was,
Oh,
again,
yeah.
Grey Chris was mining strange synthetics or mining alien remnant tech off of Milu and using this so-called terraforming facility to hide that, because again, mining that for profit is illegal under
Yes.
this sort of international intergalactic type law. So they were hiding that and using a quote unquote failed terraforming project to disguise that effort. And eventually the terraforming facility would have just fallen out of orbit and crashed into the planet and been destroyed, until Mensa encouraged the wider galactic community to look into Grey Chris's activities. And so GI took on all right, we'll go take a look at this failed terraforming event to see what went wrong, because that's a tragedy that terraforming failed. And Grey Chris was like, we weren't terraforming.
Yeah.
Which is what Murderbot is there to get evidence of. But Wilkin and Girth were sent there to make sure that the facility breaks up as originally planned. The combat bots were originally there as protection against raiders, and then left in place when the facility was abandoned. Ordinarily, like a terraforming facility might rely on like outside security, but because Grey Chris wasn't actually terraforming, they didn't want to rely on outside security.
Yeah.
So the combat bots were operating under sort of their original mandate, which was kill intruders. And GI was registered essentially as intruders. But then Wilkin and Girth, they thought they were going, because there's no way, like, it sounds like there's issues, there's some sort of like radiation or some sort of signal interference, so that Milu Station can't contact the terraforming facility. So there's no way for signal to get through there. You have to physically go to the facility. So Wilkin and Girth were physically going to the facility to, what they thought, send a signal pulse to destroy the tractor array that's keeping the facility from falling out of orbit. But what they were actually doing was reprogramming the combat bots to do that. And Grey Chris was hoping that the combat bots would then also take out Wilkin and Girth and remove any evidence of this ever happening.
That makes sense. And that shows how convoluted this book is, that I needed you explaining it to me to be able to put all those pieces together. But yes, that's also just random semantically. We do get a distinction between strange synthetics and alien remnants. To us as readers, it doesn't matter, but it's a fun bit of world building that they specify alien remnants are mineral or biological, and strange synthetics are technology. But it's all coming from the same dead sentient alien race. So they're used basically interchangeably, and we will probably also use them interchangeably, but just as a little fun factoid, they do technically mean different things.
Well, and I had questions about that last episode
Hmm.
because the first book, Alien Remnants, is used, and the second book, Strange Synthetics, is used. And I think this was Martha Wells being like, "Oops, let me clear that one up for you."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And thank you. I had questions. I'm sure other readers did too. That's why there's the distinction.
Speaking of kind of throwaway characters, things that are moved past very quickly, I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the humans that we meet at the very, very beginning, who
Yeah.
are on a 20-year indentured labor contract being shipped out to the middle of fucking nowhere, and the fucking dystopian capitalist horror of all of that, because Murderbot is really affected by its experience with these humans, and I think that maybe part of the reason that we don't dwell on them too much in the narrative, besides the fact that they just leave, is that it just emotionally can't handle the reality of their situation, and it knows that
Hmm.
they're doomed. It refers to them as the doomed humans, and there is nothing that it can do to rescue them from the horrible situation that they're in. There's a line talking about how the labor contract included shelter but charged a percentage for everything else, like food consumed, energy use, and any medical care, including preventative. I know. Rati had said using constructs was slavery, but at least I hadn't had to pay the company for my repair, maintenance, ammo, and armor. Of course, nobody asked me if I wanted to be a sec unit, but that's a whole different metaphor. Note to self, look up definition of metaphor. But this is a fucking hellscape, and even the length of time, the 20 years, the humans don't seem to understand why it matters if they're using the recommended corporation RIM standard year, if they're using a proprietary calendar system. They are basically signing away their entire lives because they're in such a desperate situation, and they don't even know the specifics of how it's all going to work.
Yeah. Or if they're using like the planetary year for the planet they're going to live on. And you can guarantee that the company is using that whatever company has indentured them is choosing the longest one of those.
Hmm.
And you can also guarantee that like they won't be allowed to leave if they work up debt, which is like their food and the medical care and the clothing and the like, that's it's very company towns, company script in
Hmm.
space,
Yeah.
right? I owe my soul to the company store,
Hmm.
which, if you're not familiar with the history of the labor rights movement around the world, during the Industrial Revolution, there is a phenomenon called company towns, in which a company would establish usually like a mining facility, and it would have a town next to the mine in which everything, the housing, the stores, everything was owned by the company. And so you were paid by the company, but you weren't paid in cash. You were paid in company script, which could only then be used at the company store in town, which always had higher prices for food than you were paid by the company. And so you'd take things on credit and be in debt to the company store, and then you're further in debt to the company. And so the company effectively isn't paying. I mean, first of all, they weren't paying you at all, but they effectively then you are paying the company to live there and work for them. And that's just this in space.
And Amazon is trying to do that now in the year
Yes.
2025. I don't think that any of their big projects are underway at this point, as far as I know. I would have to do a quick little cheeky Google to see about that. But that is something that they are actively trying to bring back because it is a very profitable model.
Yes. You have the right to be paid in legal tender for your work. You have the right to not be paid solely so you are forced to use the company as your sole source of food and housing and livelihood.
Hmm.
So just remember that. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like this, talk to your fellow workers about that.
Mhm.
Find your systems of recourse, outside people that you can talk to, legal representation. Yeah. So, but yes, did you have other? Because there were some funny moments from that, which was Murderbot ends up as security consultant Ryn on board the ship, masquerading as an augmented human. RIN, not RYN. So, it's doing its best, but yes, no one can match the original. There is a fun line of like it having to establish the rules and like get involved in some scuffles. Rule number 1, do not touch security consultant Ryn.
Very
You know,
important rule.
I'd only had to pin one person to a wall.
Mhm.
If you bother her again, I will break every individual bone in your hand and arm. It will take about an hour. I just imagine delivered in the most deadpan, staring directly into their eyes, but Murderbot's not actually doing the staring. It's watching through a camera.
Mhm.
Because it would not make eye contact. Why would it do that?
There were humans and augmented humans everywhere, all around me, looking at me, which was hell.
I also love that on the first page, it talks about missing Art.
Yeah.
At various points in our relationship, Art had threatened to kill me, watched my favorite shows with me, given me a body configuration change, provided excellent tactical support, talked me into pretending to be an augmented human security consultant, saved my clients' lives, and had cleaned up after me when I had to murder some humans. They were bad humans. I really missed Art.
I had a very similar quote, which was also about missing Art. Also, I missed Art, and I even missed Tapan and Marrow and Rami. If you had to take care of humans, it was better to take care of small, soft ones who were nice to you and thought you were great because you kept preventing them from being murdered. So it's obviously not forming the kind of connections with these humans that it has with its previous humans and with Art, but I think even in this first chapter, we're setting up that bonds and relationships are going to be a big theme in this book.
Yeah. In this book and in general, Murderbot is now sort of coming to terms with the fact that like it can define its own relationships to people,
Mm-hmm.
and that it actually does want to do that.
Yeah. We have kind of a nice mirror with GI, which also every time we say that, that's how it's abbreviated in the book, but that just makes me think of digestion whenever I say
Same.
GI.
I was like
As
gastrointestinal.
yeah, as two hot bitches with tummy issues. That's not usually the context in which I am used to that abbreviation, but it's faster than saying good night lander independent. So GI kind of mirrors Prezox as team of humans doing science who like each other, but with the addition of Mickey and seeing what it's like to have a bunch of nice humans with a construct in the mix that they're already familiar with, that they treat as a part of their team. And how does it feel for Murderbot to watch those interactions and to compare how the humans treat Mickey with how it wants to be treated? There's a lot of
On Murder,
juicy
and
stuff there.
Mickey's not a construct. Mickey's a bot.
True. There is a distinction between bots and constructs. It has been constructed, but yes, if we
Yes.
are being correct about language in these books, yes, it is not a construct, it is a bot.
Yeah. Yeah, we learn a lot about like artificially constructed intelligences and the
Mm-hmm.
differences in levels, I feel like, through this book, because we have references to the previous bot transports. We have the bot transport at the beginning of this book. We've encountered Art. We've encountered Murderbot and other sect units in previous books. We've encountered sex bots in previous books. Transport and ship, we've encountered now the drones, the combat bots, the semi-autonomous diggers in this book, and Mickey. And like, where are there differing levels of intelligence? Like, what can they respond to? How can they think? And so I'm currently replaying Mass Effect Andromeda, which
Mm-hmm.
is the fourth one, sort of spin off in the Mass Effect series. It gets lambasted as the worst one in the series. I really like it, but that's because I'm a nerdy science bitch, and it's a lot about like science and exploration. And still there's shooting, which is also fun.
Sounds like Art would love it.
Art would have a great time. And I get to play a wonderful space lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
Pathfinder Rider. She's doing her best. Anyway, point is, Mass Effect has an interesting take on sort of this differing level of artificially constructed mind, right? And when I Googled it, I saw like other things come up about this. So I don't know if it's like an accepted term in computing, but VI versus AI, virtual intelligence versus artificial intelligence.
I have never heard that before.
VIs in Mass Effect, and I assume potentially elsewhere, are sort of, they're honestly what like to us gets called AI. They can like learn things and pick up things, but really they're responding to their program.
Mm-hmm.
They are like they have a series of protocols and they operate within those parameters, and they can't really reach outside of those parameters. They don't really learn, they don't really think. Whereas an AI, an artificial intelligence, learns and thinks and can adapt and change and grow and essentially operate like a human brain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it might not be exactly the same, particularly like in Mass Effect, in the case of the Geth, they're a hive mind, but they are an artificial intelligence. And so, like, Art and Murderbot, and clearly constructs in general, are like that artificial intelligence, I feel like. Like, they can, you know, respond and learn and grow. And Murderbot talks about, like, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have the code to do X thing, but then it like adapts other bits of code and it writes new ones, and it
Mm-hmm.
grows and it changes and it evolves. Whereas like the combat bots and transport and ship, those are VIs, right?
Yeah.
They have a set of instructions and they will follow that set of instructions, and you can adjust that set of instructions, but like that's what's getting delivered to them. And then there's even the lower level, the like semi-autonomous diggers, which are not even like VI level. That's like, I am running a program now. When the program completes, it'll be done.
But even the diggers, Murderbot feels this tenderness for. It talks about them
Mm-hmm.
as being sleeping and not wanting to wake them up because the central intelligence that, this AI that would have governed the facility is no longer there. It is offline. Presumably, Grey Chris extracted it because that technology is very expensive, leaving behind all of the things that are semi-autonomous. And Murderbot doesn't want to distress or upset any of these things that wouldn't be able to understand what's going on, which is really sweet and kind of sad. And even intelligences like ship, and we call it ship and not the ship because that's ship with a capital S. That is a name that Murderbot is calling it. And even though
Mm-hmm.
it, especially with Mickey, makes fun of Mickey and doesn't like it and has a lot of big angsty feelings about it and thinks that it's stupid, still recognizes that it is a being that should be respected, and it doesn't want to treat it unfairly.
Well, and Mickey seems to sort of almost bridge the gap. Like, Mickey seems to be able to learn and respond, but doesn't do that in quite the same way that Murderbot does.
Yeah, Mickey is able to, if not exercise free will, at least sometimes use its own judgment. Towards the end, when it sacrifices itself, Donna Benna orders Mickey to change its priorities to save itself as opposed to saving its friends. And it says, no, I want to save my friends. And it
Mm-hmm.
is programmed with the ability to make that choice, But one of the things that really infuriates Murderbot is that Mickey is like that TM, and we'll discuss what being like that is in this case, just because it wants to be. It is living its best life. It loves its humans. It loves its function. It does things for them because it wants to. And
Mm-hmm.
it really hurts Murderbot to see alternate this like alternate reality where, you know, this could be me, but that's not what I want for myself. Because Mickey, Donna Bennett introduces it as the team's assistant. Murderbot sees it as a pet, and I think it's somewhere in between there, but I think they definitely treat it more like a pet or a child than they would a coworker.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And Murderbot doesn't want to be infantilized.
Right.
Saying like, this
Right.
is embarrassing. This is gross. I can't bear to watch it. But also,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, it talks about like there has to be a happy medium somewhere
Mm-hmm.
between getting treated like a horrifying killing machine and getting treated like a pet.
Yeah.
There are one of the other pieces that was throwing me for a loop was just like, how many combat bots are there? So I like went through and there are 4 combat bots.
That is more work than I did.
There are 4 combat bots, and then it mentions there are 30 combat drones, which Murderbot takes over at one point.
And they're its
And has.
friends.
And they were my new drone friends.
Yeah, Murderbot also loves its drones. It cares for them and is sad when they break and die.
Yeah. It's so interesting to see how, you know, Murderbot on the one hand knows that transport and ship and the, you know, the diggers and even Mickey aren't nearly at its level of intelligence, can't respond or perceive in the same way that it can, but also still wants to give those. It sees them as independent beings. And, you know, when it has to hack transport and ship and cut itself out of their memory, it feels bad about doing that. It's like, I can do that, but I don't want to.
Yeah, because it's spent its entire life being forced to do things against its will. It doesn't want to rob anyone else of autonomy. And it also
Mhm.
understands that sometimes things have to be done for the achievement of a goal, but it's going to be tormented about it.
Speaking of Murderbot being a murder bot,
Mm-hmm.
when Wilkin is holding Donna Benna hostage and Murderbot breaks in, freezes Wilkin in her suit, and then gets Donna Benna free for the second time in the book, by the way. Murderbot is fully about to execute Wilkin there.
Oh, yes.
Like, she has been disarmed. She cannot move. She has been locked inside her power armor. She cannot move. She cannot scream. She can just be there. And Murderbot literally is like, look away. You don't want to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of implied too, because Murderbot takes the grenades that Wilkin has, that Murderbot is going to basically like lock a grenade onto her armor and walk away.
Yeah.
And Donovan is like, no, wait.
Yeah,
We need to
maybe
force her
slow
to
your roll.
testify.
Yeah.
Yeah, make her testify.
And then it has to grudgingly admit that that's a good point.
Wilkin and Girth both use she, her, and I feel like it took me until this reading to notice that.
Brain cell, I was about to say the exact same thing. I didn't register that at all the first couple of times that I read this, because I just don't really, because Murderbot doesn't care about human genders, it comes through so little in the narration. One thing that I was on the lookout for this time, because you had pointed it out previously in Artificial Condition, was the cleverness of us not seeing humans using any gendered pronouns to refer to Murderbot, and that continues in this one.
No, it
Although,
doesn't.
well, if you let me do the second half of my sentence, Ryn. No, I love you.
Security consultant Ryn.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Is that we learn that security consultant Ryn uses she, her pronouns. So was that how Murderbot was being addressed? At what point would that have come up? Because it seems to be something that Donna Benna knows or is
Or
assuming.
assumes. Yeah.
So there's something giving Donna Benna that impression. I don't know, but it was interesting.
Yeah, because in the first, like, when Murderbot in Artificial Condition poses as security consultant Eden, it displays itself as not having a gender in the feed.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it doesn't attach pronouns to itself. And I don't know if that is the case again here. Like it's interesting, like, how did Donna Benna come to that conclusion? That said, I remembered a little piece, something I had seen, a tweet from Martha Wells.
Ooh, let's hear it.
I keep seeing people say that Murderbot refers to itself as she, her in the books, the ones I wrote. Could someone comment with a quote from the books I wrote, or point me, the writer, to where that is? Maybe I can clear up the confusion. In the books, which I wrote. And I think, honestly, this is probably that instance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read somewhere that, like, I think what she was seeing was people talk about translations, foreign translations.
Ooh, interesting.
Because, so I went ahead and I looked up a couple of different translations, and I didn't get to actually read any of the translations in languages that I'm at all familiar with. What I did do is I went and I scrubbed through the first episode of the TV show in Italian, and from what I could see, they managed to get by without using gendered pronouns for Murderbot in the show. But okay, so apparently in the German translation, Murderbot is, because German is a gendered language, as is, Italian, as is Spanish and French, and there are many, many languages that I am totally unfamiliar with that are gendered. I didn't look up anything in Danish, but Danish doesn't have like masculine and feminine, which is another language that I'm sort of vaguely familiar with, having lived there, but do not speak. For the record, do not speak Danish. Jeg taler lidt dansk. But in the German translation, Murderbot is given feminine pronouns sometimes and masculine pronouns sometimes, depending on how it's previously referred to. Because unit is feminine, apparently, in German, but bot is masculine.
Ooh, that's really interesting.
So depending on the situation, the pronoun is used differently for Murderbot. Mickey in the German translation apparently gets masculine pronouns, and Art gets both like inanimate pronouns and masculine pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
The Italian translation apparently uses feminine words for it, because the phrase that gets used for it, machina assassina, killing machine, is feminine.
Love it. Girl boss.
We support women's wrongs.
God forbid women have hobbies.
Listen, we can't talk about Murderbot like that, but we can talk about Wilkin and Girth.
So true. Yes. Again, who we had just not picked up. I felt that way about, I think it was Valescu as well in the first book, going, I don't fucking know what pronouns this person has. And we have also done that for other books. I'm remembering, I think it was Satisfaction Guaranteed, where there was a character.
Oh, fucking God.
Who we were like, oh, we all thought that this character used they, them pronouns. And I don't even remember what their actual pronouns were. But when we were talking about it in book club, we realized that we had all been wrong somehow.
Quite frankly, Satisfaction Guaranteed is one of those books where I'm like, I feel like the author was just kind of uncomfortable putting in trans people.
Mm.
There was like a throwaway line about like a trans woman one of the characters knew. And then there were other characters who were like, you definitely could have played with trans themes here,
Mhm.
including, again, another one of these characters that refuses to use their given name and only goes by their last name and gets annoyed if anybody uses their given name. Like there are themes. There's like various like body dysmorphia themes in that book. And that is not to say that like cis people can't and don't deal with that. But for a book that was like so much like focused on the characters' queer community around them,
Mhm.
it felt like, on the one hand, now that I think about this, when I read it, I was like, that's just weird that like this like wildly queer community has not a single trans person in it, especially because like our community is so full of trans and non-binary people.
Mhm.
You honestly, as our lovely cis person, are an anomaly.
Thumbs up. I am used to being the only cis person in a situation, and I feel like that is a privilege that I have passed some kind of vibe check. So I'm just trying to stay on the right side of that vibe check.
But I have met other like queer people who it's like, wow, I'm really the only trans person that you interact with,
Mhm.
aren't I? That's weird. You have a whole queer community that you interact with on the regular, and everyone in that community is queer, but there is not a single trans person in it. Interesting.
I wonder why they don't want to hang out with you. Maybe examine that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's really a thing in romance, especially. I see a lot of it in queer romance that there will be a virtue signally mention, usually of one of the characters having slept with or dated a trans person at some point in the past, being like, oh, I'm cool and open minded. I slept with a trans person once. Maybe not the flex you think it is, fellas. Try again. But yeah, that is absolutely, absolutely a thing. But bringing it back to
Bringing it back to Murderbot.
Murderbot.
La Máquina Asesina. I'm trying to think what else I had for this book. There is a line at one point, I was tired of pretending to be human. I needed a break.
Mhm.
God damn, I relate.
Yeah. Shit's exhausting.
It's tiring.
Speaking of not being human, as Murderbot's relationship with Mickey evolves and they start to kind of trust each other a little bit, and Mickey doing the same thing that Art did of going, we're friends, we're best friends, I love you, and Murderbot going, stay away from me, don't touch me. But they're moving in a good direction, and then Mickey betrays Murderbot by telling Donna Benna the truth when Murderbot had asked it not to. And so then Murderbot's kind of giving it the cold shoulder, and Mickey's feeling sad, and it's all just feelings all over the place, and it's disgusting. But Mickey confesses something to Murderbot and says, I never talked to a bot like me before. I have human friends, but I never had a friend like me. And perhaps part of the reason that it's so over the top is just that its personality and that it's very sweet and trusting and outgoing, but also it's really excited to talk to someone that it has shared experiences with. And
Mm-hmm.
Murderbot is struggling because it also wants that, like we talked about before, it wants to have that connection, but also struggles with it because, like, how Art is not the same as a sec unit, Mickey's not the same as a sec unit. It's not a bot. Like, I'm not like you, but we're kind of close. And I want to be like you, but I don't want to be like you. I don't know what I want. That's stressful and I want to avoid it. And also, I don't want to be your friend experiment. I am not ready for this. It's difficult, but I like that we see Mickey be complicated and have its own reasons for wanting to do things.
That's an interesting thought, is comparing and contrasting Murderbot's relationship with Art with Murderbot's relationship with Mickey,
Mhm.
and comparing Mickey and Art. The big thing that ties Mickey and Art together is that both of them like their humans.
Mhm.
neither Mickey nor Art has been mistreated by humans. And so both of them trust humans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think perhaps therefore that's why they're both more willing to trust Murderbot out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And Mickey, confesses that it doesn't know what a sec unit is. Like it had no prior knowledge of sec units prior to meeting Murderbot. But Art did. But Art didn't care. And yet, Art has that almost a similar relationship with sec unit as sec unit does with Mickey, which is like that its processing power is so much higher. It has so much more capacity for learning and growth and analysis. It's on a different level.
Mm-hmm. And it also has the skill of dealing with specifically adolescent humans, which we'll talk about that in the future. But it has young people on its crew. It's owned by a university. So it's used to dealing with people who are prickly and recalcitrant and not eager to open up and make friends. So, Murderbot being in an emotional state similar to a teenager, Art knows how to handle it. There's a line earlier on where Mickey is just being so aggressively friendly and Murderbot's going, "Are you just instructed to answer every question with yes? What's your fucking deal?" And then Mickey sends back a little smiley face and Murderbot is metaphorically slamming its head against the wall. And it says, "Mickey was a bot who had never been abused or lied to or treated with anything but indulgent kindness. It really thought its humans were its friends because that's how they treated it. I signaled Mickey I would be withdrawing for 1 minute. I needed to have an emotion in private."
Yeah, no, Murderbot. Yeah, no, Murderbot is an abuse victim and is having trouble figuring out how to trust,
Mm-hmm.
which is very fair. It has trauma.
A lot of it. And it actually, I have another quote if I may pull it up. So it's talking about when it first arrived at the quote unquote mining facility or terraforming facility, excuse me. "I don't know why I expected to see damage and signs that the human staff had run for their lives. There was no indication that this was anything but a planned abandonment. Maybe I was thinking of Ravi Hyrule again. You'd think once I'd seen the place, found out what had happened, the partial memories would fade. Not so much, it turns out." That's trauma, babe. That's you're getting triggered. That's what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's having a rough time. And we will see Murderbot go through healing over the rest of the series, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's not going to be struggling this much forever. The whole arc of all of these books is ultimately very hopeful. And I think that that's one of the things that I love about it, that we still, despite all of the horrors, there are still these moments where people can connect and good things can happen. And then also gradually the needle can move towards the righting of wrongs and justice happening.
This is, speaking of horrors, again, this is a horror movie.
Oh, yes. The big, scary, empty, abandoned terraforming facility. Don't go in there.
The
It's
empty
haunted.
facility that, we don't know what happened. Somebody gets grabbed out of nowhere by something you don't fully have a good look at. And then you're working with people you don't really trust who betray you.
It's a haunted house. The bots have
Yeah.
unfinished business.
Yeah, you think you've saved the day, and then, oh, nope, the monsters are still there. Like, no, this is again, it's a horror movie, much like All Systems Red was. I feel like, Artificial Condition took a little bit of a break from the horror movie, but this is a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
It has all the hallmarks. It even almost has the pacing, even though we talked about the pacing being a little weird. Like the first half of horror movies, or like a good portion of that exposition is like hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything looks fine. there's something lurking over in the corner, but like it's sunny and bright, and then all of a sudden the coloration changes, and then there's blood and murder and guts everywhere. And oops, that's Jason in the corner. Yeah.
Side note, as a horror lover, I have read so many books. I have listened to horror podcasts. I'll occasionally play a horror game. I can't do horror movies. As soon as it's really visual, and I was talking to Pat about this earlier, if I'm not in control of the narrative in a game, you can choose when you turn the scary corner. You can kind of figure out what to expect. But in a movie where you're totally passive and then the scary film is just happening to you and it's in front of you and you can see it, I can't fucking do it.
I have never really been a horror movie person. Honestly, the one like I've seen The Shining,
Mm-hmm.
and like I have not watched all of Psycho, but like, and I've like seen Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like I've seen those, but really the only one that I like sat down to watch with people was like Cabin in the Woods,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of a satire.
Yeah.
It makes fun of horror movies. It's a horror movie, but it's lambasting the whole genre.
I had to watch a lot of horror movies for my gender studies major, actually, because they are really
Interesting.
rife with gender commentary. The two that we watched a bunch, but the two that I remember were Rosemary's Baby and Silence of the Lambs, which both had very different things to say about gendered experiences. But there's a lot of subversion and negative stereotypes and reclaiming of things and people exercising their power and confronting the things that repulse us. Horror is really, really fascinating. I just don't like watching it as a movie. Don't like seeing it.
I definitely had like more like horny on main thoughts when I was writing these notes, but I didn't write them down.
Oh, so sad.
I'm so sorry. So I only have one other thing for this. So before we go to my tangent, and I wanted to check in and see if you had anything else for Rogue Protocol before we tangent and take it out.
No, I think that's about it. This is a tough one because of how complicated it is. It's very much in the middle, not one of the ones that I would say is great on its own, but it serves the broader narrative. It's good because it's Murderbot. It's definitely an enjoyable read, but you have to take it as part of the bigger picture.
I agree. And I don't think it's, as we sort of noted, it took me several reads to get the nuances of it. So you either have to go in being like, I'm going to closely read this, or be like, I'm just going to kind of accept that what happens happens.
Mm-hmm. That there's cool robot fights, and that's fine.
There's robot fights, and the parts that I'm really going to listen to are Murderbot having emotions, because that's the growth like that will continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good. It's not my favorite one of the series, though.
We should rank them at the end of this.
Oh, we will. Definitely.
Note to self, I'll file that away.
But so this one is called Rogue Protocol, obviously. So I was thinking about, it was my thought was, is Murderbot a rogue? And then my thought was, if it is not a rogue, what is its D&D class?
Ooh.
And it is so tempting to say fighter.
I would say monk.
Interesting. Justify that.
Just because of its fighting style. It does a lot of close hand-to-hand combat, quick reflexes. It can be kind of cerebral. And, monks are very interested. They have their spiritual element. Murderbot has its emotional, social element in that it's not necessarily experiencing emotions and socialization in the same way that everyone else, but it's studying them. It has a discipline surrounding mastering these things. And it punches people really hard with its big, strong fists.
That's interesting. One could make the argument that Murderbot is a paladin.
Justify that.
It's a reluctant paladin, perhaps, but it has this like sense of duty and sense of it feels like it needs to provide protection, that it needs to redeem itself for what it did on Ravi Hyrule or at at Ganaka Pit. I think you could also, from a very, like, if you want to map a one-to-one mechanics from the 2014 5th edition. We don't talk about the 2024 in this house, mostly because I haven't sat down to bother learning any of the changes, and I don't care. We've been playing the 2014 one since about 2015. So if you want to map one-to-one mechanically, I feel like you can make the argument for Eldritch Knight.
I was thinking Warlock and that the company is its patron.
You could do that.
Or the art is its patron, honestly.
Oh my god.
Art would be the worst Warlock patron.
Art would be terrible. No, but like, drones are just fine familiar. Its little energy weapons are like cantrips.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got its general combat skills. Yeah, I mean, monk definitely crossed my mind. Paladin, rogue is interesting and tempting because Murderbot can be, like you said, a little cerebral.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't stop it from not be like, it's not a full caster. It's got some magical abilities in keeping with the sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic rule.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's got some magical abilities. So, it's arcane trickster, eldritch knight, sign knight type things, half caster like a paladin or a ranger type character. But I don't think I could see warlock like it's not a caster.
Yeah.
It talks too much about how its job is to chuck itself at the problem physically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For that. And well, it's, it definitely thinking through things. The main part of its strategy is still going to be, I'm just going to hit it until it stops getting up.
Mm-hmm.
With it being whatever the problem is, I'm going to hit the problem.
The phrase that it uses is kill the shit out of it.
Which is very good. If you listeners have thoughts on a Murderbot D&D build, obviously it's a Warforged.
So true, actually.
Let us know.
If Ryn has seduced you through this podcast and you want to follow up on our offers from the beginning of the show.
Oh my god.
I am nothing if not a great wing woman. I am many things that are not that. I've never wing womaned for anyone. Anyway.
I thought I had a lot of hankies out of my back pockets last night at the merch. And then I intersected with another queer who was flagging even more heavily than I was. And I was like, oh,
hello.
I've been outdone. Cool. No, they were incompatible.
Tragic.
But if you have thoughts on Murderbot's D&D class, if you have other thoughts about this episode or our past or future episodes, you can leave us a review or a comment on whatever podcast platform you're listening on, if the podcast platform you're listening on allows that sort of thing. If it doesn't, you can find a different podcast platform. You can you can find us on our social media at FanAppPod on whatever social media we're on. The ones that we're most active on are Tumblr and Instagram these days. You can send us an email at thefandomapprentice@gmail.com. Subscribe to the show and you will get our episodes as soon as they drop in the feed. We release every other Tuesday. That's the end of my role, Sam.
Shout out to somebody in California who downloaded 34 episodes in the last week. I hope that you're good, and I hope that you catch up with this eventually. Let's see, if our episodes range from, let's do some quick math. If our episodes are average an hour and 45 minutes, 1.75 times 35.
Like our longer ones. That's our longer ones. They average like 1.15.
Roughly 50, 60 hours of Fandom Apprentice. Thank you. I hope you're okay. Because it was all...
Welcome.
We can't see we can't see your home address, listeners, but we can see vaguely regions where downloads have happened, and it was just one super concentrated dot. So I think that was all just one person. We love you. Thank you.
I love that people are still finding us and catching up on the show. Yeah, if you're new to the show, we have a very large backlog of Lord of the Rings and associated ephemera. We are building into our sci-fi era, so there will be more sci-fi to come beyond Murderbot, worlds beyond number.
And I think it is time for us to retreat into our repair cubicles, and we'll see you all next time.
Shut down for a rest cycle. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
The Phantom Apprentice is produced and edited by Ryn and Sam. Our music is composed and performed by James. You can find more of his work on Spotify and Bandcamp under Beiruz, Baeruz. Our art is by Casey Turgeon. You can find more of her work at KCT Designs on Instagram. The content discussed is the property of the original copyright holders and is used here under fair use. Amazing. I do want to know how this is going to sound.
Honestly, it's really satisfying. It's a good sound.
Keep it in the first cut so I can hear it, and then we can cut it out.
Tori and I had a lively conversation about mic sounds, which they were
I know. We were talking about it. One time.